Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabe Cohen, and I'm GuideStar's Director of Communications. I'm pleased to welcome you to GuideStar's second Impact Call of 2016 and our 10th overall Impact Call. Before we get started, I want to invite everybody to join us on Twitter as we live tweet from our @GuideStarUSA Twitter handle, and the hashtag that we're using today is #GSImpactCall. As we wait for the last-minute people to join us today, we wanted to start with a polling question. So for this question, please check any of the answers that apply to you. And the question today is, what brings you to today's Impact Call? The answers are, I want to learn about GuideStar's impact. I want to learn about hosting my own Impact Call. I want to learn both about GuideStar's impact as well as potentially holding my own Impact Call. And lastly, I want to learn how I can get my organization to the GuideStar Nonprofit Profile Platinum participation level. So I will give everybody a few seconds to answer here. While I do that, I just want to remind everyone that we are recording today's event, and it will be emailed to everybody within 48 hours, so that if you miss anything, you can go back and listen to it again. All right. So and we're starting to see the results here. So we're seeing a lot of interest. This is pretty great. We're seeing a lot of interest in Platinum, which is great. Jacob's going to talk about that, and then also about GuideStar's impact, and then both B and C as well. So that's great to know. Really excited about that. And let's go ahead and start diving in to the call today. We have, as always, we'll leave a few minutes at the end for questions, and you can submit those either through Twitter using the hashtag GSImpactCall or through your WebEx platform, and you can see there how to do it. If you're on a Mac, I'll just note that it looks a little bit different, and the button is on the bottom. Okay, so we're going to move on to our agenda now. And first up is going to be Jacob Harold. He's going to be providing an overview of the nonprofit sector impact calls, what they are, our purpose in hosting them, and why you should consider following suit. After that, he'll give a brief overview of GuideStar's role in the nonprofit sector, which will provide some context to GuideStar Platinum, our newest level of our GuideStar nonprofit profiles. After that, our Vice President of Strategy and Finance, Mizmun Kusairi, will lead us in a recap of last quarter's financial and programmatic results, and then we'll wrap up with lessons learned and, as I mentioned, questions from many of you. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jacob, and I'll just note that Jacob is home playing nanny today to his 1-year-old Cyrus, so if you hear crying in the background, we have a good reason for it this time. With that, Jacob, I'll let you take it over.
Thank you, Gabe. And right now, little baby Cyrus is asleep, so hopefully he will stay that way through the impact call, although he, like all babies, does care a lot about impact. So I just wanted to take a moment quickly to say what this call is all about for those of you who are new. As Gabe said, this is the 10th time that we have taken a pause from GuideStar's activities to make sure that we were systematically sharing with you all, our constituents and stakeholders, what we're thinking, what we're doing, and what our results are. And so to a certain extent, this is based off of earnings calls that you have for public companies on Wall Street. Sharing their results with financial analysts. But we've tried to adapt this for the unique circumstances of the nonprofit sector, and to have it be a dialogue, not just us broadcasting updates from GuideStar or reporting on our results, but also creating an opportunity for all of our stakeholders to provide feedback and ask questions. And we found it to be a very useful exercise. And in a sense, what it is we're trying to walk the talk. If GuideStar is going to ask nonprofits to share information, we need to be willing to do the same thing. And it's an ongoing experiment. This is the 10th iteration, and we're constantly tweaking it. And in fact, today we're making a big change, which is shifting this from being 60 minutes to being 30 minutes. And so our hope here is to make it as crisp and efficient as possible. And these calls have been very valuable for GuideStar, and we think they could be valuable for other nonprofits as well. So next slide, please. So we have created a impact call template if any of your nonprofit organizations want to similarly share with your stakeholders how things are going, what you're learning. create an opportunity for that kind of feedback. So if you go to guidestar.org/impact, you can find that template. Next slide, please. Which is shown here. And if anyone downloads it and finds it interesting, please let us know. Tell us about what you've learned. And this is just one of many ways that we're trying to improve the flow of information in the nonprofit sector to help all of us who are devoting our lives to making the world better to have access to the information we need to make better decisions. Whether we're nonprofit executives or individual donors or foundation program officers or journalists, we always need information to be able to make the best possible decision for our work. And we at GuideStar see it as our job to help to build a system where that information can flow. So next slide, please. And this diagram is the quick overview of the role that we see ourselves playing in the nonprofit sector. There's a lot of detail here. We don't expect you to absorb all of this, but just note a couple of things. One, that there's a flow of information from the left to the right, and there are many different players in the nonprofit sector who have information that is relevant for the creation of social good, whether that's nonprofits themselves or donors or volunteers or beneficiaries or experts. And then on the right-hand side, there are many different players who need information to help them make good decisions, whether it's a nonprofit trying to find a partner or a donor trying to choose which organization to give to. And so our challenge at GuideStar is to try to bridge that gap and to bring in many different kinds of information and then distribute it not just through our website, but through the 191 other platforms, National Donor Advised Funds, Amazon.com, community foundations, et cetera, that are using our data. Now, many people associate GuideStar with the Form 990, the regulatory document that nonprofits file with the IRS, and that makes up a significant part of GuideStar's data, but it's not the only source. And we are increasingly focusing on getting information directly from nonprofits so that we can supplement the information that comes from the 990 with an additional layer of data that helps to tell a richer and more multidimensional story about nonprofit organizations. Next slide, please. So to try to clarify to users and to nonprofits these different layers of information that we're trying to add on top of the 990, we have a simple bronze, silver, gold, and now platinum scheme. So a nonprofit that provides basic up-to-date information about your organization and its operations will get a bronze participation seal. And then similarly around financial data, silver, qualitative programmatic data at gold. And what I mean by qualitative is a sentence answer to questions about what's your goal, what's your strategy, what's happened so far. And until recently, those have been the three levels that we have offered to allow nonprofits to tell their own story in a richer way, in addition to the data that's available on the Form 990. But we're really, really excited to launch the fourth tier, the platinum level. And next slide, please. And platinum is about providing quantitative data about your programs. So what we mean by that are number answers to the question of what are the results that you're getting against your mission. A few things to note about platinum. So we find that it's very useful when nonprofits are able to find other organizations that use the same metric. They measure the same thing, because that allows you to benchmark and compare. So platinum is it's designed to help find those clusters of organizations using the same metric. However, we also think it's very, very important that nonprofits have a sense of ownership and agency over the metrics that are used to track their own progress against their mission. So a fundamental principle for us for GuideStar Platinum is that nonprofits always have control over what metrics they use to describe their own progress against their mission. So the GuideStar Platinum system is designed to simultaneously steer organizations that may actually be measuring the same thing into clusters so they can find like-minded organizations and learn from them, while always ensuring that nonprofits have full control over which metrics to use. We've talked to more than 100 experts and collected about 700 metrics that make up our nonprofit results catalog, which is a initial seeding of GuideStar Platinum and offers suggestions and possibilities for nonprofits as they think about how to best tell the story of their work in quantitative terms. But if a nonprofit doesn't find a metric that's appropriate for them among those 700, they're always able to add their own. And this launches tomorrow. We're thrilled that it is fully built and ready to go live on Wednesday. And we've already seen an incredible response. We first announced this a few weeks ago and had more than 500 early adopters within 48 hours. And so there's just a sense of, there's a desire within the broader nonprofit sector for a system that allows nonprofits to share information about their results and to do that in a way that enables learning. And fundamentally, this is about learning. We see Platinum as an opportunity for organizations to clarify their own accountability systems, the way they tell their own story, but even more importantly, for the field as a whole, for us as a community of people trying to make the world better, to collectively learn. And as we collect this data from nonprofits, and we expect many thousands of nonprofits to reach the Platinum level within the next several months, it's going to be an incredible opportunity for us as a field to learn, to see how many nonprofits are measuring outputs versus outcomes, how that might break down across different issue areas or organizational size or geography, and how many organizations are measuring the same thing and how many of them have a metric that is really unique to them. These are questions that many people in the nonprofit sector have wondered about for a long time, and GuideStar Platinum is going to offer an opportunity for the field to share this information at scale, and we're just really excited to see what happens. And I should mention and emphasize that this is 100% free, absolutely free for nonprofits to share this information at any level on the GuideStar profile, including Platinum. And so with that, I will close my discussion of Platinum. I'm sure there will be questions, and you can keep an eye out on our site for more information as it's launched tomorrow. But we see it as one of the most important things in GuideStar's history. And we're really, really thrilled with where it is and excited to see how the nonprofit sector responds to the potential of being able to tell a collective story in numbers in a way that really reflects the diversity of the nonprofit community. So thank you very much, and with that I will hand it over to Ms. to talk about our results from the last quarter.
Great, thanks so much, Jacob. As Jacob mentioned, and as you all know, it's important for us to not only walk the talk here at GuideStar, but of course, we wanted to be Platinum on day one ourselves. So we learned, you'll see here that given that this is our 10th impact call, we have some history and some information to share with you. This is the first time we've revamped the way we're sharing our programmatic results. Our work is organized around 3 different areas right now: our data collection efforts, our data distribution, and data innovation efforts. And, in looking at our data collection efforts, the way that we thought it's important to measure our progress, which we've done in the past, but you'll see here kind of a trend in the history over the time since we've started having impact calls. We've changed the wording on this to be the number of organizations who share enough information to earn a seal of transparency on GuideStar. For those of you who were on the February impact call, you'll recall that we had a big data cleansing effort at the end of 2015. So that number dropped for us, and we learned from that effort. By collecting this information, we understood better what we needed to do for the future. So we were very excited to see the growth in our overall number of organizations who have this seal. It's grown 5% in Q1, and we are very excited and very hopeful that the numbers will continue to grow. And next quarter we'll be able to add on another layer there, not just bronze, silver, and gold, but also the next level of Platinum, and hopefully include many of you who are interested to learn more about how you can get to your organization's Platinum level as well. Next slide, please. So there's 3 different ways that organizations can use GuideStar data. So the way that we distribute our data, the first is through our own website. So that first chart on the top, the number of unique website visitors, that's a metric that we ourselves got from the Common Results Catalog that Jacob referenced. So we wanted to make sure that we had results that were comparable to other organizations. You'll see the line there in our performance has been relatively stable over the last year or so. We have grown about 3% in Q1 from the end of the year last year, and we're excited that some of this new profile page revamp and some new product features that we have coming out will enable us to continue to ramp up the number of unique users on GuideStar.org. That bottom left chart reflects the number of websites and organizations that use and share GuideStar resources and information. So those are other websites and other mobile apps that use GuideStar data primarily through our APIs. So that's application programming interface, real-time way that GuideStar data gets updated on other people's websites. And you'll see that trend as well has gone up over time. What we're most excited about here is a refresh that we're having at the end of 2016. So we're going to be, making sure our messaging on those APIs and our marketing efforts are aligned so that we can continue to drive those numbers up higher. The third chart there talks about the number of foundations that have adopted GuideStar for grant applications. What this is GuideStar has partnered in Q1 with 3 major grants management software vendors, Flux, Foundant, and MicroEdge. And they, have really contributed to that growth in Q1. It's now over 33 foundations that have adopted this. And what this means is that there's an auto-populate that happens of GuideStar data on these grants management software vendors, so that nonprofits, only fill out information once on GuideStar, and that efficiency and of time and savings of effort can be redeployed to other efforts within the organization. So we're very excited, again, to keep that number growing. Hopefully all of these will be up and to the right as we gain more success with your support. On to the next slide, please. So the third way that, we think about our work is through data innovation. And, that you'll see that as an infrastructure organization, we look at what GuideStar is doing and also what the sector is doing. And you'll see that top area there is grayed out. And for those of you who've been on our impact calls in the past, you know that we had an experiment in 2015. So for one full year, we collected our metrics and how our tools, the usage of our tools, our learning tools and our comparison tools, how that performance is tracking over time. We actually, after that one-year experiment, realized that, we're not satisfied with those metrics. We're actually going to pause on that, so we won't be sharing that anymore with you. But what we're going to continue to do is to share our sector metrics. We are one of many organizations in the nonprofit infrastructure space, and these metrics that we track ourselves, we wanted to make sure to share with you as well. So those are metrics from Giving USA, who I understand are actually releasing the information next month on giving amounts in 2015. We're also going to be running a webinar with the publishers of the Money for Good research next week or this week as well. So hopefully you'll join that webinar to learn more about the work that folks have done. And so those metrics right now are the same as we've reported in previous quarters. What I am excited to share with you, and we'll get into more of this in the lessons learned, but what we're going to be focused on in looking at some of these new metrics is to think about kind of going beyond output. So what you've seen in the last couple of slides are the usage and results of our various products, our various initiatives and programs. What we're going to be tackling this year is looking more systematically at how we collect and share our actual outcome measures. So these could be things like the number of decisions that are influenced by GuideStar data, dollars saved through efficiencies created by GuideStar data, and the level of societal trust in nonprofits. You know, these are all not easy to calculate, and even more complicated, we think, in trying to think about how GuideStar's work actually makes an impact in the broader community. So with that, I will move on to our financial metrics. Great, next slide. So this slide demonstrates our performance in Q1 2016. You'll see that those yellow bars represent our Q1 performance. So our revenue was essentially on target, about 1% short. And a lot of our revenue this quarter has only been earned revenue, which, you know, is very strong. But you'll see that contributed revenue portions that was high in 2015. That was essentially a very generous and big grant that we got early from the Gates Foundation that we are essentially spending down this year. So the next set of numbers that you'll see there are operating expenses. Those are actually below budget for Q1. And the reason is that some big expenses that we were expecting to make in Q1 are actually delayed to Q2, so we expect that to catch up later in the year. So as a result, our operating income, and we're, as I mentioned, you know, because we're spending down the Gates grant, we're going to continue to expect an operating loss through most of 2016 until Q4, which is when we've conservatively timed the receipt of other grants that we're expecting in 2016. But timing is always tricky, so we'll see how it goes. We continue to be optimistic. Next slide, please. In terms of our balance sheet, you know, because expenses have been delayed, our cash position continues to be stable and ahead of target. And likewise, given our lower operating loss, our unrestricted net asset position is also slightly ahead of schedule. Next slide, please. And all of this, you know, I'll just say that our team is really busy. Literally, this next 2 weeks, we are in testing for a lot of major revamps in our software. The way that we track our internal accounting operations, the way that we track our customer and stakeholder relationships, we are revamping. We're getting a new accounting platform, Intact. We're getting a new customer relationship management system, Salesforce, and we've really looked at how we can continue to make more efficient our internal operations, the way that we collect and report on our programmatic and financial results so that we can better understand our performance and track our progress and, you know, be able to share it with you all. So with that, I'm going to move on to lessons learned.
Yeah, and Jacob, I think you were going to talk about this a little bit.
Sure. You know, so what I would say is that there are a couple lessons that we've really learned in this process. One is we've been reminded just how hard it is to track programmatic results. As you saw in Miz's slides, there are a number of metrics that we feel very confident about. But as we really try to get towards outcomes, it becomes harder. And many, many other nonprofits have found the same experience. And we see that as a ongoing process and one that we're just excited to wrestle with. And for us, going through the process of becoming platinum ourselves was an important part of that process of learning. And then I'll also say we just had a set of lessons around these impact calls, which, you know, are at one time when we focus on ourselves as opposed to focusing on you, focusing on the nonprofit community, and that it's also been just a great process of learning for us as we thought about how do we streamline this, how do we share as much information, get as much feedback as possible, and do it in a short period of time to really respect everyone's time, and especially those, you know, there are now 250 of you who've joined us today, and we're very thankful for that, but we want to be as efficient as possible.
Great, thanks Jacob and Miz. And with that, we're going to move on to some questions. And first, just one final poll for today. And while we launch that, I'll let you know what the question is. It's, are you interested in learning more about how to update your nonprofit profile and get to gold or platinum? The answers there are yes, somewhat, or no. And I'll just let everybody know that if you are interested in learning more, there's a couple places you can go. The first is guidestar.org/platinum. And the second is you can just reach out to us via email at profiles@guidestar.org. So those are both great resources that you can look at. And with that, I'm going to move on to some of your questions. As Jacob mentioned, we are going to be launching Platinum tomorrow, and one of the questions was from Dale, who's one of our early adopters. So congratulations, Dale, to you and your organization. Dale was asking when the seal is going to start to appear on profiles, and what can be expected from GuideStar on tomorrow's launch. So the good news is, Dale, those seals are up now on your profile. Just make sure, and this is a note to all of our early adopters out there, make sure that you click Publish within the interface. And once you do that, the seal will appear. Tomorrow we're going to be launching, and I direct everybody to, Jacob has a blog post that he's written that's coming out, and you can find that at trust.guidestar.org. So thanks very much, Dale. And we had another question about early adopters as well, as to how many early adopters we had. As Jacob mentioned, we had about 500 organizations apply to be early adopters within the first 48 hours. We had almost 1,000 total apply. We have selected a little bit less than that. There's going to be a few hundred organizations that are going to be early adopters, and we're going to be recognizing those organizations on our website. We feel as though those are organizations that are really dedicated to demonstrating their results and progress. Next question that we have here is, we actually had a couple of different questions, and Jacob, I'm going to throw this to you. Just some questions about outcomes versus outputs as we look towards metrics. And are we going to be learning from what we see internally at GuideStar, the results that are coming in through the Platinum program as to the difference between outcomes, who's sharing outcomes and outputs, that sort of thing?
I mean, yes, it is a great question, and you know, for those of you who aren't familiar with the terminology, an output is the sort of short-term result of what you've done. So, for example, a job training program, outputs might be the number of people who complete the program, whereas the outcome is the lasting social impact that results from the work that you do. So, in the case of a job training program, that might be someone who doesn't just complete your program, but actually gets a job and keeps it for a year. And so we in the field aspire to measure not just what we do, but the lasting results that those create for our communities. But it gets harder and harder as you try to measure those lasting results. And one of the most exciting things we think about Platinum is that we finally, for the first time, are going to, at the field level, be able to understand patterns of which kinds of nonprofits are more likely to report outcomes, which outputs. Does that vary by size or geography or issue area? And it's going to be an incredible opportunity for us to learn and for the field. So we absolutely will be sharing what we're learning once we have a critical mass of participants, which hopefully will happen relatively quickly, and that will be an opportunity for us to take what we've learned and really reflect that back to the field to improve practice across the board.
Excellent. And we are almost at time, but we did get a couple more questions, Jacob, so I'm wondering if you can give us a quick 20-second answer here on new organizations that were just formed and kind of how they can be added to GuideStar.
Yes, it's a great question. So for the most part, we are relying on the excuse me, on the IRS to perfect timing for me to get coffee down the wrong pipe there. Relying on the IRS to provide the information for us about which organizations are legitimate nonprofits. Now, one of the challenges is that not all categories of nonprofits are required to have the same kinds of filing with the IRS. So, for example, churches do have a much lower threshold. So we have different methods for different types of organizations. And what I would say is that I would invite anyone to go to GuideStar.org, click on Update Your Nonprofit Profile, and find what kind of organization you are, and use that path to make sure that your profile is up to date. And if you have any questions, to go to the GuideStar community, which is community.guidestar.org, or you can click the button at the top of the page to ask any question you may have that's specific to your particular type of nonprofit.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Jacob, and again to you, Ms., and to all of the listeners out there. A few follow-ups on the screen here of upcoming webinars, and then again, for more information on Platinum, know that you can go to guidestar.org/platinum. For more information on impact calls, you can go to guidestar.org/impact. And again, keep an eye out for that blog post tomorrow that's at trust.guidestar.org. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.